Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're blasting off into the high-flying world of the 1979 James Bond adventure, Moonraker. From thrilling space sequences to jaw-dropping stunts and some truly memorable villains, this film took the spy franchise to new heights, literally. But behind all the laser beams and zero-gravity antics, there's a treasure trove of fascinating stories that even die-hard Bond fans might not know. So buckle up, prepare for launch, and let's explore 20 things you never knew about Moonraker. Ian Fleming wrote his 1955 novel Moonraker with the specific intention of adapting it for cinema, after filmmakers had expressed interest in his earlier work, Live and Let Die. The American actor John Payne secured a 9-month option on the film rights in 1955 for $1,000, with a contingency for a further $10,000 if the project moved forward. However, Fleming cancelled the agreement after Payne reportedly attempted to claim the rights to the other Bond novels as well. Eon Productions had initially shelved Moonraker as a potential sequel to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but they fast-tracked its development following the phenomenal success of George Lucas's Star Wars. To align with the series' trend for larger-than-life stories, the producer, Albert R. Cubby Broccoli, replaced Fleming's original concept of a one-piddling little rocket threatening London with a more ambitious space-age plot. Production designer Peter Lamont procured 2 gondolas. The first doubled as a speedboat and concealed a skirting in its hull that could inflate, lifting the craft out of the water. The second hid an Austin Mini chassis within its skirting to simulate a hovercraft speeding across St. Mark's Square. Roger Moore, who nicknamed the gondola Bondola, struggled to pilot it onto dry land. The sequence where it transforms into a hovercraft and rises from the water only succeeded on the 5th attempt. Reportedly, during the first 4 takes, the vehicle was so unstable that Roger Moore fell into the water, requiring his suit to be replaced each time. It was fortunate the stunt worked on the 5th take, as he was by then wearing the last available dry suit. A climactic cable car fight, originally planned for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, was revived for Moonraker on Rio's famous cableway. During production, stuntman Richard Graydon, doubling for Roger Moore, nearly fell to his death over 2,000 feet below when his safety harness failed. The terrified crew, including Ken Adam, reportedly watched in horror from Sugarloaf Mountain as Graydon clambered to safety. A stunt double also stood in for Jaws on location, as apparently Richard Kiel was ironically afraid of heights. He did, however, enjoy biting through the thick cable despite wearing Jaws' teeth, as it had been made from licorice. The opening freefall sequence, in which Bond is pushed from a plane and struggles for a parachute mid-air, took 5 weeks to film over Lake Berryessa in California. It required over 80 separate jumps from an aircraft, with one camera operator following the action using a camera fixed to his helmet. Stuntman Jake Lombard performed these falls with a hidden miniature parachute concealed beneath his suit. He even cut his long hair and beard to closely resemble Roger Moore, portraying James Bond in the sequence. American actress Jacqueline Smith declined the role of CIA agent and astronaut Dr. Holly Goodhead due to her commitments to Charlie's Angels. You've got to love the names of these Bond girls. The filmmakers had originally wanted Lois Chiles for the role of Anya Amasova in The Spy Who Loved Me, but her agent claimed she had retired. In truth, Chiles was studying acting in New York after a critic's harsh remark that she was no more than a table decoration had shaken her confidence. Director Lewis Gilbert later met Chiles on a flight to the US, and she accepted her role of Holly Goodhead to gain experience, despite her already notable appearances in The Way We Were from '73, The Great Gatsby from '74, and Death on the Nile from '78. Cubby Broccoli approached his friend Frank Sinatra to perform the Moonraker theme, having pursued him since You Only Live Twice. Composer John Barry and musician Paul Williams even prepared a song titled Think of Me, but Sinatra declined, saying he'd rather play a villain in the film. Barry then teamed up with lyricist Hal David to rework the song into Moonraker. Kate Bush declined the offer due to touring commitments, while Johnny Mathis withdrew after losing enthusiasm for the track. With the film's premiere fast approaching, the producers turned to Dame Shirley Bassey once again, who recorded her third and final Bond theme at short notice. Executive producer Michael G. Wilson recommended his Aikido instructor, Toshiro Suga, to play Drax's lethal manservant Chang. The fight between Bond and Chang in Venice's Vanini Glass Museum was adapted from a scrapped idea for a brawl inside Cairo's Museum of Egyptian Antiquities for The Spy Who Loved Me. It was filmed inside a former aircraft factory at Studios de Boulogne. David Bainham and Roy Sears spent months crafting the 17th century style Venetian glassware destroyed during the fight, using a fragile material called Dow resin. Broccoli phoned Steven Spielberg to request permission to use the iconic 5-note motif from Close Encounters of the Third Kind as an electric door code in Moonraker. Spielberg, of course, agreed, and the tune ultimately featured as the entry sequence for Drax's Venice laboratory, with the passcode set to 12589. Years later, Spielberg returned the favour, asking Broccoli if he could use the 007 theme in a film he was producing, The Goonies. Broccoli replied that the Bond theme contained a few more than 5 notes, and that it was not a fair deal. He was just joking, of course, and the theme song accompanied Data's scene in The Goonies. Derek Meddings and his team were nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects for Moonraker. The miniature fleet of space shuttles featured in the film's climax was filmed on the 007 stage, alongside the exterior of Drax's space station. To simulate the station's disintegration, Meddings and his colleagues fired shotguns at the model. Meddings' team filmed each element of the space scene separately, rewinding the film in the camera each time. A very risky move, until all elements were captured, such as the space shuttle, the Earth, and the Moon, for a single shot. For the climactic space laser battle, the film was reportedly rewound up to 48 times to incorporate the various elements of each shot. Meddings later reused his model of the Earth from Moonraker in his final film, GoldenEye. Moonraker was originally intended to coincide with the launch of NASA's first space shuttle orbiter, Columbia. However, the replacement of many of Columbia's ceramic heat shield tiles delayed its maiden flight by 2 years, inadvertently making Moonraker a work of science fiction rather than science fact. With no visual reference available for the shuttle's performance, scientific expert Eric Burgess and former NASA conceptual designer Harry Lange assisted the crew with the film's space-based scenes. Meddings and his team used bottle rockets and signal flares to simulate the launch of the space shuttles, filming salt pouring out behind them in slow motion to represent the impressive smoke trails. Although Moonraker is rarely praised for its tone or scientific accuracy, the sequence featuring Roger Moore's face being contorted by gravitational forces is often noted as one of the British actor's most convincing scenes as James Bond. It was achieved by directing powerful air nozzles at Moore, a method which sounded relatively harmless, but which he later reported had actually bruised his face. There is an example of the Mandela effect in the film, which is a collective false memory. Many claim that when the towering villain Jaws meets the petite blonde woman named Dolly, played by Blanche Ravellec, the two shared a comical moment when they smile at each other, his grin revealing his metal teeth and her smiling back with metal braces. Even a BBC News article referred to Dolly's braces. Yet, in every existing version, VHS, DVD and Blu-ray, she clearly has none. Some insist the braces were present in the original theatrical release, while others argue they never existed and that collective false memory explains the discrepancy. Well, Ravalek herself clarified in 2016 that she never wore braces in the film. How did you remember it? After holidaying in Rio de Janeiro following The Spy Who Loved Me, Cubby Broccoli deemed it the perfect setting for Moonraker and sent a crew to capture the city's famous carnival in 1978. The main unit, including Roger Moore and Richard Kiel, arrived in Rio in January 79. As they couldn't wait for the next carnival, the producers staged their own, giving Rio 2 carnivals that year. The role of Bond's MI6 ally Manuela was first given to Brazilian actress Adele Fatima, who filmed several scenes with Moore around Sugarloaf Mountain. However, her performance was later judged unsuitable, and the part was recast with Dutch actress Emily Bolton, with Fatima's footage removed from the final cut. Director Lewis Gilbert filmed a sequence of James Bond and Dr. Holly Goodhead walking through a zero-gravity meditation chamber on board Drax's orbiting space station, which was cut from the film. Despite this, the trading card company Topps later released images from the deleted scene in a card set promoting the film's release. Numerous ideas originally intended for Moonraker could not be incorporated into the finished film. Early drafts had featured a circus and twin knife-throwing assassins quite prominently in the plot. Although Jaws later used a circus big top as an unconventional safety net in the pre-credits sequence, these core ideas were ultimately repurposed for Octopussy. Also, the Acrostar microjet featured in Octopussy was originally intended to be Bond's escape route from Drax's temple lair. The scene was ultimately scrapped when the Angel Falls in Venezuela, over which the jet would have flown, dried up unexpectedly. The filmmakers had also considered India and Nepal as potential filming locations, but they came to the conclusion that the logistics of using them would be impractical for a globe-trotting adventure. India later became a primary location again for Octopussy. This is the second appearance of the Man with Bottle, or simply the Drunk. He is a recurring comic character who appears briefly in 3 of Roger Moore's Bond films, portrayed by Victor Torjansky. He's seen reacting in disbelief to Bond's extraordinary exploits. Victor wasn't just an extra, he also worked behind the scenes on the Bond films. Moonraker cost a staggering amount to produce, around $35 million, which led to much stricter budgetary control over the Bond films made in the 80s. The director Lewis Gilbert remarked that he had previously made entire films for the cost of its telephone bill alone. Despite the immense cost, it earned over $200 million worldwide, a record for the franchise which would not be surpassed until GoldenEye 16 years later. Former British soldier John Miller posed as a stuntman working on Moonraker, which was shooting in Brazil at the time, to try and capture the British great train robber fugitive Ronnie Biggs, who was living in the country. Aware of Biggs's craving for publicity, Miller used it to lure him out, pretending to offer £5,000 for a cameo role. Biggs was to be flown to northern Brazil and then taken by boat to the film set. However, the plan was pure fabrication. Miller had no link to the Moonraker production, and his loose tongue proved his undoing. He bragged to a journalist, who then warned Biggs. Realising it was a trap, Biggs failed to appear, eluding capture once again. Miller's harebrained plot was no Argo, and neither Eon Productions nor the British government had any involvement. Decades later, in 2001, Biggs voluntarily returned to Britain, was arrested, and spent 6 years in prison before his death in 2013. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about Moonraker. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.